Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking, of course, about the political instability in the country that has, unfortunately, since the vote of no confidence happened, been fueled by an opposition at this time that seems supremely unconcerned with things like economy. Of course, there's a lot of criticism. There is, a lot of lashing out at the government at this time, but without any concrete measures, without any participation in the National Assembly, and without any constructive role that one would have liked an opposition to play here. We'll be talking about the overall political situation at this time and of course and that's impact, its whole impact on economy at this time. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Ali Salman, who is an economist. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we have with us Agha Ikrar Haroon, who's a political analyst. Thank you for being with us today. A little later on, we'll have other guests in this program also. I'm going to start off with Agha Saab. Ji, Agha Saab, like I said, there is a lot of criticism on the government from the opposition. One has to, at least concur to that extent. But of course, we haven't seen any concrete measures. We haven't seen any constructive criticism come from the opposition side. Of course, there is an all-out agreement that there is no other option except to go to the IMF. On the other hand, the government has also, consistently maintained that when the vote of no confidence happened, things were left in the kind of disarray to which they are still correcting at this time. If we talk about Maryam Nawaz, she's also saying the same thing. If we talk about the Finance Minister, Isaaq Dar Saab, he's also saying the same thing, that they're trying to correct the situation and perhaps things had to get a little, had to go a little bad before they can go and get better in this sense. How do you look at the overall situation?
Thank you so much. First of all, we remember this IMF deal was initiated by PTI government. First they started it, then they denied it, then they took some decision politically which were not in accordance with IMF, you can say commitments. The things started from there. We lost our reputation and IMF lost confidence upon Pakistan as a state. This confidence building measure took almost 11 months and it is still not announced. I mean, I have read this news thrice in newspaper, it is done but it is not done. We may wait for another week, some days, maybe 10 days, maybe 2 days, I don't know. This is the reality of the IMF deal with the government, current government. And secondly, when vote of confidence was, no confidence was moved, so I am of the view that the then opposition could have thought about what is going on in future and what kind of economy they are going to take.
You're saying put the national interest over, their own interest, which they thought their political interest at the time.
Exactly, because everybody was saying Pakistan could not survive and could not run like the way PTI was trying to do. Our foreign relation was almost at the lowest level in the history of Pakistan. We had very serious problems with China, with even with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, and you remember this US cipher fiasco. So with whom we had a good relationship? With no one.
So you're saying even our relationship with other countries, of course, has been primarily dictated by political, considerations. Of course, we saw what happened as far as the cipher conspiracy and that's impact on our relationship with one of, major countries in the world. That also happened because their own interests seem to be the main focus. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Ali Salman Saab. Ali Salman Saab, overall the situation at this time I don't think anybody would say is great as far as economy is concerned. We've spoken from time to time on the measures that can be taken, but the kind of difficulties we see at the time, how much of them would you say are because of the kind of political instability we've seen in the last consistently, the political instability that is fueled, after whether it's a march, whether it's a jail bharo tehreek or whether it's the call for elections in this kind of a manner in which it happened, there is one thing or the other. It's not been allowed to let the economy exist without these kind of pressures. Would you agree?
Well, I have a slightly different view here, Marukh.
Okay.
First of all,
Fair
I
enough.
think, let's, you're using the words of Senator Ishaq Dar in his press conference today. He said the situation is still continuing to be precarious. And, I think he is appreciating the difficulties the country's economy in. Now, as far as the role of the political instability is concerned, in general, it is true that obviously whenever we have a situation in which we are not respecting the rules, the constitution, the institutional traditions, then these kind of uncertainties will emerge.
But in general, would you say that this is unprecedented, the kind of uncertainty that we've seen, or do you think?
Well, I think the situation, particularly when it comes to the program with IMF, I frankly do not ascribe it to the political upheavals.
Okay.
The political situation is definitely very murky at the moment. Even if you see
but if you look at the dollar and the way that
yeah,
we've
so I'm
seen
coming to that. Yeah, so exactly. I mean, so I think there are sound economic explanations available for the kind of problems we are in. As we just heard from our colleague, it started from the former Minister of Finance Shaukat Tareen decision, but it continued with with both Mr. Miftah Ismail and Mr. Ishaq Dar. And so I think the policies, as far as the IMF is concerned, can be attributed to the lack of decision making on time. We knew, and they also, of course, know, being the finance minister.
For which you don't think political pressures are responsible?
I do not think so. I think political pressures will be there in any democratic dispensation, and we should welcome it. As long as we we are respecting the constitution, the rules, I am not too worried about the political instability within. But what I am worried is, what is the role of the government? What is the role of the finance ministry? What is the role of the state bank in such situation? And I think there are a lot of questions which are being asked and which needs to be asked before we actually can mention the political situation. For instance, look at the dollar exchange rate policy, and although officially we know that there is no intervention, but for the last many months, the pressure on the state bank, the pressure on the commercial bank has been there. Imports have been restricted, which has ultimately created a black market of dollars, and which offers perfect explanation of the volatility in the dollar market we are seeing. I do not see political situation responsible for it.
Ali Salman Sahab, I'll come back to you. Let me go to Agha Sahab. Agha Sahab, when you try and build pressure, like we've seen, when you dissolve assemblies, when you go for marches, when you go, even if you look at the international media, for example, when they cover Pakistan, when they cover what's happening in Pakistan, what does it seem to you? I mean, what are we showing to the world? It doesn't seem to be a state. The impression that the opposition would have you take is that it is not a state that is, in control of what's happening.
Yes.
Isn't that true?
Yes. Look, PTI always takes some actions that provides ample chance for other people to see Pakistan as a chaotic country.
Right.
And state in trembling. I mean, people. I was very unfortunate. I wrote last night. I read a article. They use the word crumbling and dismantling state. It's very unfortunate. But we are providing them opportunities. Look, you have already talked about economy, but in this economic condition, we are. We are going to see a season of elections. In Islamabad, there will be this local body election after 120 days. Then we are going to see this by-elections. And again, if we are going for elections of KPK and Punjab, the full election, the new elections. So at one place, we don't have money. And the other side, we are enjoying the season of elections. this is my personal opinion, this is my gut feeling, I may be wrong, I may be right. Even IMF is waiting, okay, let's see where their politics would go. This country is asking us, for money and crying at one side, and another side they are going to spend huge money on their
On
elections
piecemeal
free.
elections.
Yeah. So we are actually elections free. We are going to sell election, we are going to buy elections.
There are by-elections happening, and then there are, like you said,
Exactly.
the local polls have to happen.
Yes, yes.
It's also cricket is also taking place. So there is also cricket season there.
And that also is one of the, as far as, yes, of course. But how do you, of course, would you then suspend all such activities? What would you, Agha Sahab?
If you remember, in May 2022, I think in your show or some other television show, I requested government to go for economic, you can say, emergency. We have already lost 11 months. You are squeezing common man through indirect taxes.
Yes.
There are people in Pakistan who are taking $500,000 as a pension, and there is no one person of that. There are thousands of people. There are people in Pakistan who are taking 1.5 million as a monthly salary. There are people who are taking $500,000 as their medical allowances. Why they are not in a net? Why people, government is not asking them to do something, to pay something for this country? You have seen only a common man who is poor, who cannot contest you, and you are going to, every passing day I see a new indirect tax. What about, today or maybe tomorrow, maybe day after tomorrow, we are going to increase the price of electricity. We are going to increase the price of gas.
But as I understand,
this is only indirect. This is indirect tax. Why government is not clamping people who are so-called ashrafia, but nobody is ready to, grip their resources.
But Ali Salman Sahib, isn't that true? Isn't that what the taxation system, the way that tax is going to be levied, isn't it going to target the richer more than the poorer?
Well, it's very ironic that on one hand we talk about let's say the super tax, which is the tax on the very large companies, making profit more than 500 million rupees per annum. But the other hand, our taxation system continues to be regressive in nature, right? And so almost 2/3 of the revenues come from the indirect taxation, and a large part is coming actually from customs, the import stage, which is purely anti-business. And so on one hand, we talk about reforms, we talk about the need of the taxation system overhaul, but on the other hand, we are just tinkering with the system. We just are happy with increasing the rate of general sales tax by 1%, right? So this is not a reform in my view. Reform, as we have earlier spoken, is requires that we broaden the tax base. We actually should reduce the tax rate and include everyone else.
When you talk about all of these issues, when you say that it should be broadening tax base, it should your tax to GDP ratio, things that are targeting, aren't these reforms structural reforms which needed to be done? A lot of things that were the purview or the government, the last government said they would be doing those things. They said that they would be going towards these kind of reforms. Agha Sahab, isn't that true? That was the mandate as far as the last government was concerned. They started saying that they're going to go towards it, but then it never happened.
They didn't do anything actually. They just enjoyed their 42 months tenure. They didn't do anything. They promised us so many things, new jobs, residence for poor people, blah blah blah. But now you was talking about the structural reforms. Maruf, okay, I understand structural reforms would take time.
Yeah.
This is a very important issue, but we are actually cash strapped.
But did we go towards structural reforms?
We will have to go, but we will have to go. But this time, even according to latest data, there are 3.1 million small shops, medium or small shops in Pakistan, and only less than 500,000 are giving any tax or they are in tax net.
Hmm.
This is not structural reform. This is a
Okay.
poor performance of
Hmm.
your FBR.
Hmm.
Why they cannot see these shops in Pakistan?
Hmm.
Why they are, I mean, they are only saying.
Why the last government also, I mean, when we talk about white elephants, and I think Ali Salman Sahab, we mentioned this before, things like Pakistan Steel and, you know, PIA, all of those things, there was no move made towards, you know, dealing with those issues. Isn't that true?
Well, we go back to the first question here, and that is the politics, right? So when we talk about the labor unions, when we talk about you know what will happen to those jobs which we have created, Pakistan Steel Mill, for example, you know 15,000 people getting salaries for last 10 years without producing a ton of steel from their from their factory, and you can count many examples like that. So. We know that this has not happened, and in this situation, when the government has already lost significant political capital, it is not going to happen, right?
Okay.
So we have to be very pragmatic about what can be done right now. And first of all, you know, the economic stability had to be achieved.
How do you,
So-
in this kind of scenario, how do you achieve economic stability in your opinion? In,
So
in
the
today's
first,
scenario?
the very first step and the minimal step is the IMF deal, which we have not still able
But
to
where
secure.
is the, where has this, is this unprecedented in your opinion? The kind, the way, the lack of confidence that IMF is showing at this time, has it been done with?
It is complicated. It's not just lack of confidence. It's also this you know recent discussion about
Isn't it
changing
about
of
reneging on
goalposts.
promises made to the IMF, which the last government already did?
So I think that we have already sort of.
But that is one of the main
we
reasons
have
of
passed
why
at that
we are
stage.
where we are, right?
That's right. But I think currently there are other issues which are on the plate, and we have actually fulfilled significant conditions of when we talk about interest rate, when we talk about the exchange rate, when we talk about also the electricity and gas charges. So that are the conditions which we have fulfilled. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to achieve an agreement very soon. There are some differences between the government and IMF on the estimates of current account deficit. That is, we are hopeful that there will be a soon bridging of this gap. But the point is that how serious and how committed we remain to the program.
Okay.
Now, on one hand, we have a negotiation with IMF, and on the next day, if we issue a newspaper statement that it is all happening due to IMF, and we don't own these reforms or those decisions, then definitely, on the other hand, we also see that IMF is also playing politics, globally speaking. Maybe the country team is on a different line. Maybe the global politics is on a different line. It's quite complex. So it's all happening. What I'm saying is that we should have closed the deal 6 months ago. And if we had closed the deal 6 months ago, we would not be in such a tough spot as of now, because
But
we
of
have
course
lost time.
We wanted to close the deal 6 months ago. I don't think there are two opinions on that, Agha Sahab.
Yes,
No,
we
we
tried.
actually did not. If we had wanted at that point in time, I think we would have locked the deal
But again, we're
straightforward.
talking
But
about
we did not.
immense political pressure also. As far as the government is concerned, it's under immense political pressure. There's no denying that. From an opposition that's only, centering on trying to, get the government to, to look like it's.
But I mean,
the
each
instability-
government in a democratic setup will always remain under some kind of political pressure. I mean, so we should not attribute the problems to the political pressure. We should talk about economic governance. We should talk about rules of the game. We should talk about reforms. We should talk about, have we made our doing business easier? Have we done some serious changes in how we are collecting taxes? So this should be the focus of any government. And at least the finance minister, with due respect, I would like to say, should just talk about financial and the economic management of the country, and at least he should not be one who is seeing in a sort of a political score point game, which I'm seeing quite often these days. He should just be focused on the
Agha
economic
Sahab,
management.
as far as you've been wanting to say something, and then overall situation also, I'm saying that when we talk about, what about the global politics? We can't, even Ali Salman Sahab is saying the politics of IMF is something that we can't ignore. And the way,
Yesterday,
Hmm.
I mean, one of a spokesman of China
Hmm.
has
Yes.
indicated this.
Hmm.
She said, I mean, without naming the U.S.,
Yes.
a country
Hmm.
is twisting hands of several countries, including Pakistan.
Hmm.
So she has mentioned international politics is there. We cannot deny that.
Hmm.
But the issue is when IMF
Hmm.
is asking a transparency.
Hmm.
So this is first of all,
Hmm.
we should be transparent.
Hmm.
If they are asking, share with us what are the assets of, I mean, government officers or people working in a public sector.
Hmm.
So there is no harm for that. Unfortunately, uh, I, we are a country where we don't know
Hmm.
who is, I mean, getting what
Hmm.
out of public exchequer.
Hmm.
So if IMF is asking for a transparency and the opening up
Hmm.
of a state, sharing information of salaries and other perks
Hmm.
and privileges
Hmm.
of, I mean, your bureaucrats and
Hmm.
anybody who is
Hmm.
working in a public sector,
Hmm.
so there is no harm to sharing. But we are still not sharing it. Secondly, according to my understanding,
Hmm.
there are more than 55 or 60 commercial organizations in Pakistan
Hmm.
who are tax free. So
Right.
they are also asking about why they are tax free. So there are
Let
some
me-
questions.
We
As
also, Ji Agha Sahab, I will come back to you.
Yeah.
We also have with us Kaisar Ahmed Sheikh from the PMLN. Ji, Kaisar Sahab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ji, Kaisar
Maru?
Sahab, overall, the economic situation is particularly concerning at this time. Um, what do you expect in the next couple of weeks? Of course, the finance minister is talking about 16 billion uh, by June, another, national bank reserves being, increasing to 10 billion. But at this time, is it political instability? What is it, and what do you expect from the IMF deal?
Maruk, a lot has been discussed already. You
Hmm.
see, this economic mess is now evident.
Hmm.
When there was a regime change and our government came into power, I made
Hmm.
a 25 minutes detailed speech on 12th of May
Hmm.
in National Assembly. I
Hmm.
mentioned that the economy is in a mess and we all should have to get together. It's not
Hmm.
so easy to sort out the matter. We
Hmm.
the current account deficit and fiscal deficit both are miserably being suffered. We are
Hmm.
suffering in that, and efforts are being made. But you see, this is the 23rd program of IMF we are in. We are not fulfilling what happened in the PTI government. You
Hmm.
see, more than 3 billion US dollar, more than 3 billion US dollar was just
Hmm.
given to 100 or 150 large manufacturers or rich companies, just
Hmm.
0%. So at one time, just 2 years ago, we have
Hmm.
so much surplus of US dollars that we are giving it free. And all those I know because I come
Hmm.
from the business community. I
Hmm.
know those machinery which were imported at that time by
Hmm.
Raza Bakar on turf, the state bank governor, allowed on
Hmm.
turf $3 billion of machinery or other imports. So those
Hmm.
were at 0%, and now those are imported, and those machineries are lying,
Hmm.
and it's not unutilized because cotton is not there. So we don't actually our finance ministers always giving more and more attention on IMF programs,
Hmm.
either to get more loan and
Hmm.
or to pay back it. We are not concentrating. We are not giving any attention on the development of our own economy
But
or
but
the
Kaisa Saab, isn't
direct
this a
foreign.
long-term goal? At this time, of course, the primary focus has to be
Oh,
the
oh,
IMF deal.
this is not the first time. This is always, this is last many years. We are saying that at this time, because we are always our import is more, our export is less. This is not the first time phenomenon. since many years we are having this deficit, and then we are getting more and more loan and going
Yes,
to
sir,
IMF
structural
23rd time.
reforms of your,
Pardon?
a person of your experience, as far as,
Yeah.
structural reforms are concerned, certainly
Yes, that is very
they
much
have remained
required.
on the agenda for a while. Of course, the last
Yes.
government came with a mandate, with a manifesto, which was, going to target all of those areas, and that didn't happen. This
Ye-
government, of course, it's only been a few months. Do you think it's right to lay the blame at the door of this government when we look at all these, things that have carried forward?
Presently, you see, we are only concentrating, and there's no other option just to have a agreement with the IMF. Now they are delaying. There is a number of demands from them. Those demands are, our government is feeling difficult. Of course, some, you see, just yesterday, you can visualize, only yesterday in one day, our currency was devalued by 19 rupees a dollar.
Yes, sir. Do you
And
think
then,
it's about global politics also?
of course, there is impact of always there. Global politics impact, the foreign policies impact is always there. We can't deny, but still, even then, we would have to take care of our own economy. We should balance our fiscal deficit, and we should balance our current account deficit. These are the two deficits. But we are not, and we are taking more and more loans. Presently, about 55% of our revenue, total revenue, goes to the debt servicing. So this is, and in near future, I don't see any
Yes, sir.
solution
As
viable.
targeting, as far as the tax, indirect taxation is concerned, as far as targeting those who can afford to pay taxes, and the way that they're distributed, is the new tax regime going to work towards that?
I can tell you that our taxation policy has never been realistic. You see, I have been now recently appointed as special assistant to Prime Minister. I had a meeting with the Prime Minister. I told that there are a number of taxes. Taxes are there, but those are direct taxes. But the leakages are there, and I offered him that if you give me this chance, I can, within these taxes, I can collect huge amount of revenues, additional revenues, where there is a leakage, because I know them. I am among those people, and I know they.
Right, Kaisar Sahab, let me come back to you. Ji, Awa Sahab, you heard what Kaisar Ahmed Sheikh Sahab is saying. He's talking about the overall policy as far as, in terms of political instability. Let's talk about that. As far how do you see things now in the next couple of weeks, now that we're looking at this elections issue? We're looking at pressure tactics. At this moment, of course, the Jail Bharo Tehreek has ended, but of course, we don't know what kind of tactics will manifest themselves in the next couple of weeks.
Very pertinent but very difficult question. Because just look, when news came about the possibility of elections, I mean, our rupee lost 14 rupees in a day. So whenever there would be some news that this government, sitting government, may not be as stable as it is today, there will be, you can say, trickle down effect to economy, and that would definitely harm the overall system. But unfortunately, PTI is not ready to sit with anybody or to listen anything. From the very first, even they were in government. They always refrained and refused to sit with the then opposition. They are not ready to sit with politicians because they think they are beyond them. I mean, they are something
But isn't it
extraordinary. Why should they sit with poor, illiterate politicians? This is their style of dealing with politicians. Just look at their faces. their derogation is always in a, I mean, in a face of Imran Khan when whenever he talks about a politician and of the parliament. So when they are not ready to sit, when they are not ready to go ahead, what can we do? I requested through your show, government should go for all party conference.
But the APC that was held on the issue of security, even the PTI didn't attend that.
Yes. So this is what I want. Let the people decide.
Yes.
This party is not ready to sit for anything which is very important for Pakistan, even the security or I mean economic condition. Let it be exposed. Because
let me go to
sorry.
Ali Salman Sahab. I'll come back. Ali Salman Sahab, isn't it true as an economist, when we talk about policies, when we talk about economic policies, they have to by nature, they have their effect in the long term. So, you know, for us to have a successful economy, we will need to have an economic charter regardless of who's in the government.
I totally agree with that. And I think, you know, economic crisis are the best time to talk about a consensus and the charter. You know, my think tank Prime has been actually developing such a charter recently, and we'll be happy to share
But
outline
have you had
of
the
that
kind of
charter.
response have you had any response?
We
from
have been talking to the business associations in the start, and the response is very positive.
Okay.
You know, Lahore Chamber, for instance, has taken, you know, interest in that, and I think if the business community understands the importance of an agreement on economic reforms, then it can build, you know, desirable pressure on the political parties to actually agree with that.
But
Because
isn't it
unless the
the
political
isn't
parties are you know, feeling pressure from the businesses, from the media, from academia, they are not going to do it. I mean, it is not in the interest of political parties to sign a charter, to be honest, especially on the economy, because they want to retain the control on how the economic resources would flow.
But the
A
point
charter
is,
would bind them.
forever we have seen, you know, their politics has been played on the issue of economy, you know, on the issue of money, on the issue of course, and you know, every government, I think I've discussed this before also, every government by and large should have the power to make their own financial decisions, but the point is, where does the buck stop with having you know, their own interest, the political interest, and the country's interest, you know, and that has to be regulated at some point.
Yeah, as I think we have discussed also before, that, you know, each party would have certain preferences. You know, let's say
where
you know,
they want to, you know,
where
which
they want to
sector.
let's talk about, you know, how the revenue is going to be spent. So there will be certain preferences. There will be, for instance, you know, PMLN prefers to spend money on the infrastructure. People's Party wants to increase the salaries or do other current spending. So I'm not going to say that there will be 100% agreement on all aspects of the economy, but one aspect, which is how the federal government is going to be managed, the economy of the federal government, which should be considered distinct from the economy of Pakistan. Government is not country. If the country can manage its own economy, people can manage their economy, businesses can manage. Businesses are not going to default. Government may default if it does not meet the obligations.
Question. But as far as of course you're talking about the response of the business community, but by and large, from the private sector, do you think that they're willing to contribute the way they should in this kind of an environment?
Well, there are two ways of looking at it. One, of course, is that their role in the policy making. It's true that you know, a lot of business associations currently in the media are short-term. They have a short-term orientation, and it is because, you know, I think maybe the policy itself is ad hoc. If the policy making is ad hoc, then the response of the businesses is also ad hoc. They are not long-term. Secondly, we always, you know, talk about the taxation, but I think, frankly, our industries are overtaxed at the moment. Some parts of our economy are not paying desirable taxes, for instance, the agriculture, the retail sector, but the formal sector is heavily taxed, and that kind of tax burden needs to be reduced, not increased. That is the point which is not normally received in that sense. So I think we need to, when we talk about tax and the private sector contribution, we need to just differentiate which part of the economy is paying taxes and which part is not.
Agha Sahab, you were also earlier mentioning this, as far as long-term policies are concerned. we need to work towards a structural, so those structural reforms regardless of who's in power, those measures that need to be taken, considering those we've had recently austerity measures that the government has taken, the Prime Minister's announced. How do you look at them? You know, the measures that have come forward, he's clamped down on a lot of spending. Overall, how effective do you think they'll be?
I mean, austerity measures is always, I mean, it's a good statement and announcement, and we must appreciate him. But if you talk about, for example, we have around, you can say, for example, 100%, 100 or 110 persons in cabinet. If they are even not taking salaries, if they are not taking any perks and privileges, if they are not taking any accommodation or even transportation, they are just 100 or 110% people total. What about the thousands and thousands who I earlier mentioned are taking 1 million rupees as a month's salary?
You're saying
what about your corporations? He was talking about and he was asking him why I mean, why is your private sector is not ready to sacrifice? Private sector, maybe you can talk to private sector to be, I mean, to go for some sacrifice if your public sector is ready for sacrifices. Unfortunately, when your public sector is not ready for sacrifice, how can you ask a private person for sacrifice? Because actually the public sector is taking the state money, your taxes and my taxes, they are taking. Private sector is not taking. So
I don't know, Sheikh Saab, can you hear me? No, I don't think so. Ji, kaisa Sheikh Saab? No.
So first of all, if we go for sacrifice, first of all, public sector should also go for sacrifice. Our corporations, every person sitting in corporation having a salary of more than 1 million per month. So we should to look into that.
The public sector.
The public sector. And then you can ask the private sector. And one thing I will little differ with my friend, that is, he says our agriculture sector is undertaxed. No. Unfortunately, please forgive me for that. Since 50 years, I am listening and writing and reading. There are not proper taxation on agriculture. Now look at the situation. Your totally agriculture has collapsed because you have never gone for the incentive. You are buying everything from abroad. Everything from, I mean, I can give you one example of yesterday. We have a very bumper crops of this canola in this Faisalabad division. Nobody is ready to buy in the local market for a good price. So canola is a oil. We are ready to import oil, but we are not ready to, you can say, to give some support to our agriculturalists or farmer to produce canola. This unfortunate, because unfortunately our politician is a agriculturist. We have been targeting, politician, we have been targeting the agriculture sector. There is no taxation, there is no taxation. No, we have seen the situation. We are not producing almost anything in Pakistan now.
That will be a bit of exaggeration, but I think, I mean, the thing is there are agriculture markets all around the world. Right?
We haven't really, unfortunately, been able to branch into new mechanics as far
totally
as
agree
agriculture
that,
is concerned.
you know, for instance,
for example, drip irrigation, you know, things like this, which would help.
So incentives are not there. Incentives are not aligned with the performance. You see, if you, for instance, I am against the price controls. So I think we are actually depressing the rural prosperity at the cost of urban consumers when we are imposing price controls, let's say on the wheat and sugar, and I think they should be lifted. Once you lift those price control, there will be incentive for significant investment in the agriculture sector, including the measures as you have rightly mentioned, such as conservation and technology. Currently the incentives are not aligned. And if talk about any sector, of course there is a significant and growing demand of a large population in Pakistan, including the middle class. So there will be takers and consumers of all kind of products. But obviously we are not able to meet the requirements of our population because of various reasons. I think the incentives are very central to this equation.
But why, in your opinion, have we not been able to branch out into those things? Isn't it largely an ignored sector? You know, regardless, I mean, I'm talking about the last government. We saw, you know, incentives were supposed to come in, a lot was supposed to happen, but it doesn't seem to have benefited the farmer, you know, small farmers particularly. It hasn't seemed to, you know, increase any agricultural as far as income is concerned. Those things we've unfortunately
well, actually, on factually speaking, there was actually an improvement in the previous government as far as the agriculture income is concerned, as far as the flow of the capital in the agriculture market was concerned. There was actually an improvement, although that improvement was less systematic and more driven by the market conditions. But still, I think let's admit that if the rural economy was prospering, then we should admit that. But again, those reforms are not
prospering, and prospering like you are saying, then that should consistently have continued.
No, that is not possible because there are no systematic changes, right?
That's what I'm saying. So basically we would need those kind of large scale reforms to be able to reap the full benefits.
Yes, that's right. I mean, only then of course you can expect them to be taxed, but first of all we have to integrate them and bring them par in with the other economic sectors. If you talk about the rural economy and the agriculture economy specifically, you will see that those sectors which are sort of relatively safe from the government intervention, let's say the maize and rice are doing much better than those sectors in which we have heavy
like for instance cotton and wheat
government footprint. Right? Look at the sugar, every year with crisis. Look at the wheat, the flour mills, crisis everywhere. So we just need to liberalize these markets, and then I guess prosperity will follow.
Ji, Agha Sahab, your quick comments. Unfortunately, I'm also running out of time now.
The one comment.
Ji.
We must inject some money for horticulture and agriculture. This is not me. This is the chairman of Rice Export Corporation of Pakistan. He had a press conference in Islamabad. I was there. He said the lack of incentives are pushing farmers to sell their lands, and now housing colonies are cropping over there. And he was of the view that if it would continue like that, Pakistan would not be in a position to export a single pack of rice, first of all, and secondly, he was fearing that even we would be in a position to import rice from. I mean, this is the situation because there is no incentive. The farmer has a land without any incentive, he is selling it, and there is no law to control this. Horizontal. Construction in Pakistan.
Right, fair enough. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for joining us. Ali Salman Saab, thank you for being with us. Agha Iqrar Haroon Saab, thank you for joining us. We overall, as far as the situation is concerned, certainly we can't exclude political stability from economic stability, one. And second, of course, we would need long-term, sustainable reforms, structural reforms, which would depend on policies that are long-term, regardless of which government. Of course, as far as this government is concerned, since it came into power, it's been a couple of months, and they've consistently been saying they're doing damage control of promises made to the fund and reneged on, of policies that have been inconsistent. And one hopes that we can drive towards a time when we can have long-term economic policies, not driven completely by political considerations. Thank you so much for joining us.